Right now, in the middle of the wet season, floating villages along one of the world's greatest rivers are sitting on dry mud. The Mekong River is flatlining. You can see this crisis happening today. In water levels that should be high but are not, in exposed sandbars appearing during the monsoon, and in fishing nets coming up completely empty. The Mekong is one of Southeast Asia's largest tropical rivers. It flows through 6 countries and sustains more than 60 million people. For thousands of years, people have built their lives around its rhythm. The river is not just transport or irrigation. It is one of the most productive inland fisheries on the planet. Families eat fish from this river every single day. Markets depend on it. Entire economies float on its surface. What makes the Mekong special is its flood pulse. Every year, the monsoon rains arrive, and the river swells. Water spreads across floodplains, turning dry land into shallow nurseries, where fish spawn. The flood carries nutrients and sediment downstream, feeding rice paddies and rebuilding deltas. The river breathes. It expands and contracts. Life follows that rhythm. Giant fish migrate with the floods. Farmers plant when the water recedes. This pulse is not a detail. It is the engine. Here is how the system works under the hood. Upstream rainfall and snowmelt feed the river. The water flows downstream, picking up sediment and nutrients. When the monsoon hits, the volume surges. The river overflows its banks. Floodplains fill. Fish breed. Sediment settles. Then the dry season arrives. The water pulls back and the cycle resets. Input, process, output. The Mekong is a hydraulic machine built on seasonal rhythm. But that machine is breaking. The main cause is upstream dams. Over the past 2 decades, countries in the upper basin have built dozens of large dams to generate power and control water. These dams trap the river behind concrete walls. They hold back water during the wet season and release it during the dry season to keep turbines spinning. The result is a flattened flow. The natural pulse weakens. The floods that used to arrive like clockwork now arrive late, or not at all, or in the wrong amounts. The river is being turned off at the source. Let me show you what that looks like on the ground. One of the most extraordinary features of the Mekong is the Tonle Sap River. Once a year, during the peak of the monsoon, the Mekong floods so powerfully that it forces the Tonle Sap River to flow backward. Water pushes upstream into Tonle Sap Lake, turning it into one of the largest freshwater lakes in Asia for several months. The lake swells to 5 times its dry season size. That temporary expansion creates a massive nursery for fish. Millions of fish hatch in the shallow flooded forests around the lake. When the water recedes, they migrate back into the main river. This reversal is the heartbeat of the entire lower basin fishery. Dams have weakened that heartbeat. By holding back peak flows, they reduce the hydraulic pressure that drives the reversal. Recent data from the Mekong River Commission shows the reversal now lasts up to 20 days shorter than it did 2 decades ago. The volume of water pushing into the lake has dropped. That means the lake does not expand as far. Flooded forests shrink. Fish have less space to spawn. Nurseries dry out early. The reversal still happens, but it is weaker, shorter, less reliable. The system is starving. And here's where the loss becomes visible. In recent years, floating villages on Tonle Sap Lake have occasionally grounded on mudflats during irregular low-flow periods, even while some upstream areas experience flooding. Houses that should be floating sit tilted in the mud. Boats cannot move. Fishermen wait for water that does not come. This is not drought. This is mechanical alteration. The dams have turned the pulse into a trickle.
If you want to track how serious this is and see the pattern spreading to other rivers being rewired right now, hit subscribe because the Mekong is not alone in this. The Mekong is also home to some of the largest freshwater fish on Earth.
The Mekong giant catfish can grow to nearly 3 meters long and weigh over 200 kilograms. These fish are biological marvels. They need deep pools to rest in and long migrations to breed. The flood pulse historically allowed them to move between habitats, find mates, and spawn in floodplain shallows. The giants evolved around the rhythm of the river, but altered flood pulses destroy the breeding sites those giants depend on. Floodplains that used to fill with water now stay dry. Spawning grounds disappear. Migration routes are blocked by dam walls. The Mekong giant catfish has been functionally extinct in commercial fisheries since 2005. Markets that once sold these fish regularly now have none. Fishermen who used to catch them as part of the annual cycle report 0 catches. The species still exists in tiny numbers, but the population cannot sustain itself. The pulse was the mechanism. Without it, the giants cannot reproduce at scale. Beyond the giants, the entire fish population is collapsing. Fish catches across the lower Mekong Basin have dropped by roughly 70% since 2000. Families who relied on daily fish protein now struggle to fill a pot. The river used to provide. Now it withholds. This is not overfishing alone. This is habitat destruction at the system level. When the flood pulse flattens, breeding habitats shrink. When breeding habitats shrink, fewer fish survive to adulthood. When fewer fish survive, catches fall. The causal chain is direct. The flood pulse also delivers something else that is critical: sediment. Every year, the monsoon floods used to carry millions of tons of nutrient-rich sediment downstream. That sediment settled on rice paddies, naturally feeding the soil. Farmers did not need to buy chemicals. The river did the work. But upstream dams now trap over 50% of that sediment behind their walls. The sediment sits in reservoirs, slowly filling them. Downstream, the river runs clearer. That sounds clean, but it is starvation. The paddies do not get their annual nutrient boost. Yields decline. Farmers buy chemical fertilizers to compensate. Costs rise. The free ecological service the river used to provide has been cut off. And there is a secondary accelerator making this worse. In the lower basin, sand mining. Operations are removing over 50 million tons of sand from the riverbed every year. Construction industries across the region need sand for concrete, and the Mekong is an easy source. But when you remove that much sand from a river that is already starved of sediment, the riverbed deepens. Channels cut down. Banks erode faster. In some stretches, erosion is happening at 50 to 100 meters per year. Entire villages are losing land. Homes fall into the river. The combination of upstream sediment trapping and downstream sand extraction is hollowing out the river from both ends. Here is what that cascade looks like in practice. Reduced flood pulse shrinks fish habitats. Fish populations collapse. Fisheries that fed millions fail. Food insecurity rises. People who used to make a living from fishing migrate to cities looking for work. At the same time, sediment starvation weakens agriculture. Rice yields drop, farmers spend more on fertilizer, profit margins shrink. Some abandon their land. The river, which used to be an engine of food and income, is becoming a liability. The system is not adapting, it is breaking. The human price is quiet but enormous. Families who have fished the Mekong for generations now pull up empty nets. They do not have backup jobs. They do not have savings. They have the river, and the river is failing them. Farmers who used to rely on the flood to feed their fields now face a choice: buy expensive chemicals or accept lower yields. Neither option is sustainable. The Mekong used to be a buffer against poverty. It provided food, income, and resilience. Now it provides uncertainty. And the trajectory is clear. If dam construction continues at the current pace,
The Mekong risks being broken into a series of disconnected reservoirs. The flood pulse will weaken further. Sediment trapping will increase. Fish populations will continue to decline.
The river will not look like a river anymore. It will look like a chain of lakes, each one managed for power generation, with little regard for the downstream ecology or the people who depend on it. This is not speculation. This is the logical outcome of the current system. So, what should you track if you want to understand whether the Mekong is recovering or getting worse? First, watch the flood pulse timing. Is the monsoon flood arriving on schedule? Is it lasting as long as it used to? The Mekong River Commission publishes water data. Compare current flood duration to historical averages. Second, track sediment loads. Sediment levels have already dropped by roughly 50%. If they continue to fall, downstream agriculture will continue to suffer. Third, monitor fish catches. A 70% decline since 2000 is catastrophic. If catches stabilize or recover, that is a sign the ecosystem is adapting. If they keep falling, the fishery is on its way to collapse. Fourth, watch for erosion. Bank retreat at 50 to 100 meters per year is extreme. If erosion speeds up, entire communities will be displaced. Fifth, pay attention to the Tonle Sap reversal. If the reversal shortens further or stops altogether, the lower basin fishery will lose its primary nursery. Each of these signals tells you something about the system. The flood pulse measures hydraulic health. Sediment loads measure nutrient delivery. Fish catches measure ecological productivity. Erosion measures physical stability. The Tonle Sap reversal measures the integrity of the entire lower basin cycle. Together, they map the decline. Here is the reframe. The Mekong is not drying up because of natural drought. It is being turned off at the source. The flood pulse, which made this river one of the most productive ecosystems on the planet, is being flattened by upstream dams. The giants that used to migrate with the floods are gone. The sediment that used to feed rice paddies is trapped behind concrete. The nurseries that used to fill with fish are drying out. The river is being rewired for power generation, and the cost is being paid downstream. In empty nets, eroded banks, and failing farms. This is not climate change. This is engineering. Thanks for watching. If this kind of breakdown is useful, drop a comment with the next river or water body you want us to examine. The systems that feed us are changing faster than most people realize, and understanding the mechanics is the first step to seeing what is actually happening.